When the weather gets hot outside, the last thing I feel like doing is standing over a stove. So today, we're gonna make gazpacho. If you haven't tried gazpacho before, imagine something similar to a cross between pico de gallo salsa and tomato soup. It's a combination of lots of tomato with a variety of different fresh vegetables. I am nuts about salsa, and frankly, I could eat good salsa like soup. So gazpacho is the perfect alternative. This recipe requires either a food processor or a blender. I'm going to use my blender, and this container I have has about a 2-quart capacity. So the first ingredient I'm going to put in the blender is our main ingredient, which is tomatoes. Gazpacho really is a tomato-centric type of a soup. What I have in the bowl are 5 roughly chopped up tomatoes. You don't have to be too concerned with how well you cut these up, since they're all going to get macerated in the blender anyway. This recipe calls for a total of 6 tomatoes, but you're going to save 1 tomato and reserve it for later. Next, we're going to add 1 bell pepper. Ideally, you're going to want 1.5 or possibly 2 red bell peppers, but again, we're going to reserve about 1/2 of a bell pepper for later. So here I'm using 1 roughly chopped up red bell pepper. Our next ingredient is cucumber, and we're going to use 1, again, roughly diced up cucumber, but we want to seed them. And so you want to remove the seeds, and for me, the easiest way is just using a teaspoon or even a tablespoon, and I just rake it along the interior of the cucumber like that, and it takes 2 or 3 swipes, and I've got most of the seeds out. So now I'm just going to chop this up. There we go. And now that's going to go in. So just like with the tomatoes and the bell peppers, the recipe calls for actually 2 cucumbers. We're only putting 1 in here. We're reserving 1 for later. Our next ingredient that we're going to add is celery. Here I have 1 stalk of celery that has also been roughly chopped up. Next, we add 2 cloves of garlic. Now, I do finely mince the garlic. I want to make sure that even though I know my blender is quite the workhorse and it'll get everything really well blended, I want to make sure no matter what that garlic is in very small pieces right from the get-go. And then finally, we're going to add 1/4 of a small to medium size red onion that I've again coarsely chopped up. Before I start blending the veggies, just know that you can run your blender or food processor as short or long as you want to get your vegetables in the consistency that you like. Some people prefer them still kind of rough and more texture to the vegetables. Personally, I prefer mine pureed because I like a little bit smoother soup base. So let's go ahead and get this turned on here. So I'm going to let this run for a few more seconds. That was pretty good. So you'll want a fairly deep, large bowl, and you're going to be pouring the contents of your veggies that have been pureed into the bowl. And now we're going to add all of our liquid ingredients together. And I may be testing my luck a little bit here. I went ahead and put my 2.5 cups of tomato juice into a 2-cup measuring cup. Let's see if I can do this without making a huge mess. And now we're going to add the juice of 1 lime, 1/4 of a cup of red wine vinegar, 1/4 of a cup of olive oil, 1.5 teaspoons of sea salt, and this is a coarse salt that I'm using. Doesn't really matter though if you don't have the coarse sea salt. You can use even table salt if you want. 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and then lastly 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne. I personally have found that if I use more than that, it's a little too hot for my taste, but if you want to bump this up, kick up the spice just a little bit, you can add more cayenne. And now let's give this a whirl. Now it's just a matter of combining this to all of those vegetables. And then all you have to do is combine the pureed vegetables along with the liquids that we just blended. Remember all those veggies that I told you to set aside and we'd be using them later? This is what we do with them. You're going to dice them all up really, really finely, combine them together, and then this will be what we'll be adding now to our soup and when we serve it. So while I make gazpacho for myself all the time, and literally I can go through a bowl this size on my own in the matter of about 3 days. In fact, it's great diet food in case if you're trying to cut calories and lose a little bit of weight. This is kind of like my favorite thing because I can indulge and not worry about adding a bunch of extra calories to my diet. Gazpacho makes a terrific starter for any party. And if you're having like a casual get-together, you can serve it a lot of different ways. Something I like to do is use just like a little jelly jar, little jam jars. You can have a bunch of those out and your guests can serve themselves. You can create like a buffet and people can serve up some gazpacho for themselves. Or if you're having a little bit more of an upscale soiree, you could use something like barware. I've got old-fashioned glasses that are a nice size. So I like to put together like a little buffet, if you will, and I'll have assortment of diced up veggies. Sometimes I'll add some extra lime in case somebody wants to squeeze a little lime onto their soup. You can also have some diced up avocado, which is always great. I wait until the last minute to dice up the avocado so it doesn't turn brown. You can also have cilantro. A little sprig of cilantro makes a very pretty garnish. One thing you'll definitely want to keep in mind when you make gazpacho is you want to make sure it's really chilled, nice and cold before you serve it. So I suggest keeping it in the fridge at least a couple of hours before you know you're going to need to be serving. And then I think it's always great just to have something simple like a baguette, a nice toasty, crusty baguette to serve. I've got vegan cream cheese here. I've added some chives to it. In a truly traditional gazpacho in Spain where this originated, they would use stale bread and oftentimes still do, and they'll add the stale bread at the beginning when we blended all of our vegetables together. You would add the bread to the vegetables and that would blend all into the soup. Now me personally, if I'm gonna have bread, I like to know I've got bread. So I don't put bread in my soup, I just have it with my soup. Aren't these pretty? I love it. There's just such a range of colors, textures, flavors. Let's give it a try. That is so good. This is exactly what I want to have on a hot summer day. It's cold, it's refreshing. The veggies in there add that nice little crispy crunch. It's really a winner, and I think your guests are going to love it, and I know you will. For the full recipe as well as all of our other recipes, you can find them on our website at thecarrotunderground.com. Thank you so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, please subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, share with your friends. Boy, if you add a little vodka to this would make a killer Bloody Mary.